So today we're talking about your personal self and what does that mean? How do we show up? It really gets back into our tagline now, being real, rising up, reaching out. How do you show up, and are you showing up in life as one person all the time, or do you kind of divide up who you are depending on who you're with? And finding your personal self is really about having the courage to really be who you are all the time. Dr. Carol and I are on Saturday mornings reading a book together. It's called Braving the Wilderness by Brene Brown. And the whole book is about how do you own who you are and show up as that unapologetically. And just know that some people aren't going to be okay with who you are, and you need to be okay with that. And so to really get a hold of your personal self, last week we talked about belief and faith. And so belief is that vehicle that we all climb into, and faith is the road we ride upon to shift our lives, to really find who that personal self is. And I think sometimes we can learn a lot from children because they don't have that filter yet. The younger they are, the less filter they have. However, if you carry on a conversation with Sophie or her friend sitting next to her, if you ask them a question, they're going to tell you the answer, right? Because they don't know, oh, you shouldn't say that to somebody. There's no filter with a child. And sometimes we're shocked at that, and yet I think we should start to embrace it. And so to show how belief and faith work with a child, I have a story that I want to share about a little girl named Tess. Tess is 8 years old, and her younger brother, Andrew, has a brain tumor. And her mom and dad are freaking out because they don't have the money or the means to find this little boy the necessary help that he needs to get better. And little Tess can overhear them talking, even though parents try not to do that in front of their kids, how worried they are. They're going to have to sell their house, move into an apartment, because there's just not enough money. And what they really need is a miracle. And Tess hears that, and she's like, I wonder how much a miracle costs. Because mom and dad said this surgery was really, really expensive. So I wonder how much a miracle would cost. So she goes in her room and she pulls out her little jar with all her money in it, and she counts it out, and she puts it in her pocket, rides her bicycle over to the pharmacy, walks into the pharmacy, and the pharmacist is standing there, and he's talking to a man and just ignoring her. She's an 8-year-old, for goodness sakes. He's having a conversation with an adult. And so Tess does one of these. He ignores her. So then she goes, and the pharmacist looks at her kind of unkindly. What do you want? I'm talking to my brother. I haven't seen him in over a year. This is important. And Tess looks at him and she said, how much does a miracle cost? He's like, what? She goes, how much does a miracle cost? He goes, I don't know, little girl. Well, my brother needs a miracle. And the man he was talking to squatted down so he was face to face with her and said, what kind of miracle do you need? She said, my brother's really sick and he needs surgery and my family can't afford it. And I've got $1.11 in my pocket, and I want to know if that will buy me a miracle. And he looks at her and says, why don't you take me home to your family? Because it turned out his brother was a neurosurgeon visiting from Chicago. So that little boy got his surgery because that little girl had the courage to believe there was a miracle out there, and she was going to find it. How many times do we, especially as adults, don't fall back into our belief in our faith? It is one of the things that we teach here all the time, that to have that belief to get those God bumps around anything, to be excited about it, to talk about it, to share it, it will show up. But as adults, we have a time schedule, don't we? So, God, I want to move back home to Seattle. And I want it to happen. Now, here's how I work with my faith. Every time I've done this, it's worked quicker for me. I have told the divine what I want, and then I've set it out on a schedule that I think is doable for me if I was doing the work. So when I said I wanted to move home to Seattle, I had my schedule, and my schedule was that I would be back home in Seattle in 2020. And I forgot that when you really believe that you want to do something and then you really do let it go and turn it over, which I've done, then the universe went, here. How about 2016? Okay, that'll work. But the thing that I realized was that I set the intention, and because I wasn't attached to it happening tomorrow, I really did surrender it to the divine. I really did let the divine decide. It's either going to be 2020 or maybe it could be something sooner. And so how many times do we set our intention and then it's like, well, it didn't happen in 24 hours, so it's probably never going to happen. I was told a story recently of a woman who found this philosophy and wanted to shift her life. And she shared her story at Amazing Grace last week. Eric told me the story. 7 years. 7 years she waited for the manifestation of her dream. And yet when it happened in an instant. Because one day she was in an artist apartment. One day she wasn't in an artist apartment, and one day she was. And so then the 7 years didn't seem that long, did it? So there's timing, and then there's timing. I think belief and faith, they should also put on their patience. You need to have patience. You need to start believing. The older I get, the more it seems time is going so fast. And yet I remember when I was Sophie's age, I couldn't wait to be the next. I can hardly wait till I'm 16 and I can drive. I can hardly wait till I'm 21 and I get to go into a bar. I can hardly wait. And then you get to an age it's like, whoa, I can wait now, thanks. I've hit all the fun milestones, now what? But to be patient with yourself and with your dreams, and to know that if you're serious, it is going to manifest in your life. It's hanging on for the ride. Because with the ride, there are some probably lessons that you're attracting to yourself, or something that you need to learn. And so your personal self also is to remember it's an inside-out job. That's another foundational thing we teach here. As within, so without. So if you look at your world, and some people, me included, we look at our world and we'll pick and choose what we're responsible for. I'm really responsible for attracting my husband into my life. When I was in debt up to my eyeballs, that was not my responsibility. That was somebody else that drew that to me. And yet, what I realize always is everything in my life I'm responsible for. I just have to find out what that is. And I'm a living, breathing example. So is Reverend Heather, so is Bernie, so is Courtney. Everybody in this room is a living, breathing example of how they have changed their life by changing how they think about themselves or a certain situation. And so the story I'm going to use is a borrowed story. It's about a 17-year-old girl who one day realizes how much she truly loves and appreciates her father. And she realizes it because she has a great dad. She always knew she had a great dad. From the time she was 5 until she was 17, he never missed a soccer game. He makes her mom laugh. Anybody that can make her mom laugh, she just thinks is fabulous. He's always been there. He supports the family. But on this particular Saturday, she was out in the garage and she went through his tool chest looking for a plier, and she found an old crumpled up note at the bottom of the tool chest, and she opened it up. And this is what it read. I'm 18 years old, an alcoholic who is failing out of college, a past cutter, and a child abuse victim. And next month, add teen father. But I swear, I will make things right for my little girl. I will be the dad I never had. In that moment, he shifted his life entirely. That was a prayer. I promise you, I will be the best dad ever for my little girl. That, I swear to God, that's all you have to do. You have to be willing to say, here's a part of my life that doesn't work for me, and I swear I'll give it up. I swear my life will shift. How many of you have had that happen in this room? Absolutely. Absolutely. And when it happens, we're amazed, aren't we? Like, wow. 6 months ago, I was this way, and now I'm this way. How did that happen? Because I set a new intention for myself. I started to talk differently about myself. I started to quit beating myself up. Remember what Bernie said? Your past is your past. You cannot change it. And if you keep reliving it, it will create your future. And so how many of us we're stopping our personal self, we're stopping our growing because of what I call a monkey mind. Does everybody know what that is? Have you ever seen, well, the Cambodia people will tell you about monkeys. But, you know, the monkey mind is, if you've ever been anywhere where monkeys are on the loose, they have this loud scream, a lot of them. They're talking to each other. However, my monkey mind, that's what it was like. It was a loud scream in my head all the time, reminding me of everything I'd ever done that I was ashamed of. Anybody else been there? Sophie, we got to work on that right away, girl. I don't want you growing up and be my age and still have that screaming in your mind. So there is a process that you can use that helps you alleviate that. And one of the things that really worked for me, and there's all kinds of different processes, but one of the things that really worked for me is to quit telling myself, you know, telling the voice, stop it. Just stop it. Because Ernest Holmes would say, what you resist persists. And so the stop it was, I'll just play louder until she hears me and recognizes I'm there. Now, what I used to do, as many of you know, is I would drink or drug that away. So it really didn't bother me for a big chunk of my life because I couldn't hear it. However, when you give up the substance that is numbing your monkey mind, it's loud. It is loud. And to figure out, then what do I do with that? And so I had a fabulous practitioner, and she said, call it forward and just look at it. And instead of saying it didn't happen because it did, or saying I'm so ashamed of myself, because you need to let that go, call it forward and look at it, and then use it as a measuring stick. Am I that person today? No. Would I behave that way today? No. Wow. Thank you, God, for that. What a barometer for my life to see how much I've grown. And then I'd take the memory and I'd wrap it in white light and I'd blow it back to the universe. And I'd physically go through the process, because I don't know about you, my monkey mind always liked to knock on my door about 3 o'clock in the morning. And so I'd blow it back to the universe and I'd say, I don't have to revisit that unless you think there's something else I need to learn. I'm ready to let that go. I did that day in and day out for a long time. As long as needed until truly I'm pretty good with myself. Now, do I have some monkey mind every once in a while? You bet. We all do. However, now it's like, oh, that's funny. There you are again. I thought I was so over that. How many of you say that? I don't understand why that's showing up again in my life. I thought I was so over that. Here's why. I believe we're spiritual beings. I believe that we are constantly we are rising consciously. So we're on this little not a roller coaster, like a merry-go-round, only it's going up. We're getting closer and closer to the divine as we let go of all of that stuff. Here's the opportunity. I go around, I'm healed. At the level I can heal something, right? And then I go around maybe one or two more times, and then the universe goes, or my consciousness, the God within me goes, you're ready to look at this again. Now I'm to the point when that happens, I go, seriously? Again? That's funny. That's funny. I really thought I'd healed that one, and not so much. Some of our deepest seated discomforts are going to keep coming back. They're not as deep, they're not as secret, and they're certainly not as dark. But they're going to come back for you to look at it again. It's like my garden, which now I have, God forbid. So we have this beautiful maple tree in front of our house. When we moved in, I spent one entire day underneath that maple tree, weeding everything out of it. I just wanted the maple tree when I walked up the front steps to just be there all by itself. And then winter came, and it rained, and now my maple tree has all kinds of stuff growing up underneath it again. That's like our consciousness. I wish I could tell you it's a garden that never needs to be weeded again. And I wouldn't be telling you the truth. I wouldn't be being real. The truth is we constantly weed out those thoughts. And instead of making them bad, bless them. Because here's the truth. Every single one of you, no matter your worst story, has made you the person you are today. And I can look at every single person here and say, I am so grateful for who you are right here and right now. And I didn't know you back then, and I don't need to know you. What I know is that experience helped shape you today. That's where we have to get. Were some of those experiences fun? No. Some of them might have even been horrific. And yet they do mold our today. How we show up. How do we weed our garden? How do we say yes to God? And so saying yes to our personal self is to really have the belief and faith that there's something in the universe that is bigger than all of us. Call it an energy force. Call it Superman. Call it whatever you want to. Call it God, because with God, when somebody says God, we all know what they're talking about, don't we? Regardless of what religion we were raised in. Call it whatever you want to. I don't think it needs to be called anything. But know that it is in your life and it is responding to you all the time. And so if you're in one of those places right now that's a little darker than you'd like it to be, I promise you, one day you'll get to the other side of that and you'll look back and you'll go, that's why that happened in my life. That's what got me here, right now. All of those experiences, all of that stuff made me who I am today. And when you can really look in a mirror and say, I love you, and not blink or look away or shame yourself, that's when you start to really clear up and clean up all of those stories that you've been inundating with yourself with that aren't the truth of who you are. How many practitioners do we have here today? Every one of us raising our hand, what we see is the truth of who you are. No matter what story you tell us, what we see is God in form. And when we can't see it about ourselves, because trust us, we sometimes can't see it with ourselves, we see a practitioner or minister so they can see it for us. That's another reason why we come here on Sunday. So we can love and support each other and be that hand, be that shoulder, be that voice, be that person that looks you straight in the eyes and just sees you. Just absolutely sees you. And so for your personal self-belief and faith, knowing that it is an inside-out job, not outside in, nobody out there is going to fix you. If I could, I've said this before, I would. And I know it's a personal job and it's a personal journey. It's why I love coming here, why I have always loved this philosophy, is because I know I can do that personal journey. I can fall on my face and pick myself up, and everybody will still be cheering me. Everybody. And then it really is about making that connection and really releasing yourself from all those stories that you tell yourself about yourself. What if you just said to yourself, thank you, God. Thank you, God. Right here, right now. So if you're ready and you want to, you can close your eyes. And it is in that thank you, God, that place of knowing from within, that absolute connection to something bigger and bolder and braver that I am, that beats my heart, that breathes my breath, that knows without a doubt we are connected. That place that knows the truth of who I am always. It is from there that I know the truth for all of you, that each one of you is the voice of the divine. Every single one of you is that container of good. You are connected not only to it, we are connected to each other. And it is from that connection that I speak my word, knowing that each one of you is such a blessing. You are a blessing to the world because you have chosen to be here. You have chosen to take that next breath. You have chosen to reach out and say yes. And so I know for all of you in this moment, that whatever story is going on in your mind, that in this very moment you can just choose to let go and let God. It no longer needs to haunt you. It's just a record of what got you here. And so how blessed I feel that each and every one of you is present in this moment, connected, heart to heart, soul to soul, mind to mind, to every person here. Knowing that each one of us has that gift, that treasure within us. Call it light, call it love, call it whatever you choose. Each one of us carries that with us wherever we go, whoever we meet. And so let's show up from that place. Let's show up from that place of connection and of courage. And so I just say thank you, God, for this moment, for this day, for this time, for this group of souls that have gathered here today together to really be proud and to celebrate who they are and why they're here. So I turn all of these words over into the law, knowing it is spoken, it is done, God has said yes. So I let go. And in the let go, I let God. And together we say, And so it is.